Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As. Now I apologize for multiple reasons. These are going to be up much later than I intended. It's unavoidable. I was busy last night. I didn't wake up till late this morning to film these. I'm having to reshoot this because the audio got too distorted in the audio file from part 1. So I lost 16 minutes of video footage, and had I put that up with about 10 to 15% of the audio dropping down so low that you couldn't hear it, people would be pissed off at me for listening to that for 15 minutes. So I had to reshoot this, so this stuff's going to be up very late. I'm sorry. First question. I sit most hours of the day and bought a DeskCycler. Is it a good source of LISS if I pedal throughout most of my workout? I'm sorry, my work day. I'm sure it offsets the consequences of sitting for long periods of time. Thoughts? I think this is a fantastic idea as long as it doesn't interfere with your work and your productivity, and your knees can clear your desk. If you've got a desk that's high enough, you can do this. It works very well. You should be able to do so without it impacting your recovery at all, because it's just low intensity LISS. It can change your total energy turnover for people who have a desk job dramatically. In fact, when I was really sick and I had spent that almost full year in bed, when I got out of bed and I had gained like 100 pounds of fat, I helped lose my first 60 or 70 pounds using a method similar to this. I would get online and I would do stuff like World of Warcraft and other things for a couple hours a day, at least 2 hours every day while pedaling my bike, just to get some extra calorie burn, and it did help me lose that weight. It was an effective tool. Before I was able to get up and start taking long walks, which I wasn't able to do initially. So it can be a very effective tool for people who are stuck at a desk and stuck being sedentary for whatever reason for long periods of time every day. Fantastic idea. All right, next question. Please discuss dips form if there are really two variations, one for triceps, one for chest, and if it's safer than others. Thanks. You guys don't see me promote it that much for a number of reasons. I love the dips. I think dips are a fantastic exercise. If I wasn't a power lifter, I would probably be doing dips instead of bench press all the time. I'm actually not a fan of the bench press, as much as people seem to think I am, even though I'm a power lifter. I wouldn't complain if we replaced the bench press in powerlifting with a strict standing press. I wouldn't complain at all. So why don't I recommend the dips? It's a safety issue. For some people, they cannot do dips. Doing heavy dips puts extra stress on their sternum. Structurally, they can crack their sternum or pop the cartilage in their sternum. So if you feel pain when you do dips in the center of your chest, your sternum, you probably shouldn't be doing them. You need to proceed with caution. And people have a tendency, if they're not careful when using heavy weight, when they hit failure, they tend to drop too low with a weight on there. It can damage your shoulders. So excessive range of motion on dips can damage your shoulders. So they are an injury prone exercise for people who are not built to do them and who aren't careful, which is why I don't generally program them into routines for that reason. The thing to consider as far as there being two variations, no, that's like saying, are there two variations of bench press? There are different degrees of incline and decline that you can put, and it's the exact same with the dip. There are different degrees of decline, and what you find with dips, because they do allow full range of motion, you don't get the reduced range of motion on the decline. You can get to a point to where the chest is de-emphasized the higher up you go. And as the chest is more de-emphasized, obviously you're moving the same weight, unless you're using different amounts of plates hanging. If you're just using body weight to start with, using the same amount of weight. So less chest means the triceps have to work harder. It's not because it's better triceps, it's because the chest can't help as much. But if you were to add more weight through chains or hanging plates on a belt, you could get just as much tricep overload using the heavier weight with the more forward lean. It's just you're getting more chest involvement. So it varies. It's completely variable. It works on a sliding scale, not a two different exercises. So keep that in mind. It's not a simple black and white thing. And I would generally recommend the forward lean and use more weight unless you're really worried about your chest development way overshadowing your tricep development for whatever reason for you genetically. But I think dips are a fantastic overall mass and strength builder. All right, next question. What is your knock on sumo and powerlifting meets where it is allowed? All right, let me make this perfectly clear. Yes, I am very biased against sumo. However, when I am a referee or a judge at a meet, and you guys have seen me white light British record attempts on the sumo deadlift. People doing sumo, you guys have seen me hit the white light and my thing pop up white. So there's verifiable evidence that I do not discriminate in any way against people with sumo, because that's not my job as a referee to give what I think the rules should be. My job as a referee at a meet to enforce the rules as they are written and use referee discretion when something is in question. Okay, there's a big difference. Now, if we were to rewrite the rules, I think the sumo deadlift is a bastardization of the deadlift. I don't consider it a true deadlift. Given a choice, I would change it. I wouldn't actually put in the rules no sumo deadlift. I would put in the rules, because a deadlift generally means that your hands are outside of your legs when you deadlift the weight. Any stance that requires you to go so wide that you must move your hands to inside your legs should be not considered a deadlift. It's a separate exercise with a different range of motion, different bar path, completely different exercise. Therefore, that would be my criteria. And people would say, well, you can't set limits on stance. Well, sure, we set limits on the width on the bench press. We have very clearly defined rings, and if your hands are not partially inside those rings and completely go outside of them, it is an illegal variation of the bench press. There's no reason we can't make an illegal variation of the sumo deadlift based upon your grip. Just like the same with the squat. We require you to do a back squat. We don't let you do a front squat, even though for most people it would be a lot less weight. It is not a legal variation of the exercise, and we could just as easily put the same rules in place for that would cut the sumo deadlift out. And if that was ever came up to a vote for all powerlifting federations or whatever, yeah, that's how I would vote. I think it's a bastardization of the lift, and I would change it based upon grip and foot stance rules. Not actually saying the sumo deadlift, just like we don't specifically say the front squat is banned when it technically is. And do I recommend people do the sumo? Well, since it's allowed in the rules, if you would get a leverage advantage and you can lift more weight as with a sumo deadlift, sure, I would recommend a powerlifter do it. Do I recommend it to non-powerlifters? No, I don't. I don't see the point. All right, next question. During a comp lift, where is your mind? Can you hear the music? Do you notice the audience, etc.? I hear the music, and the thing is, when I start peaking for a meet, my meet music, I listen to it in the headphones when I do all my heavy lifts, so that I'm used to lifting at 90% or more with that song playing. Do I see or hear the audience? No, I block that out. I'm very good at doing that sort of thing, of changing my spatial awareness. I've always been good at that my whole life. I can tune everything out around me. I can basically make all the audience go silent. I can make them go invisible. I don't see or hear them at all. They're not there. And it's the same with the judges, and that caused me a problem at the British this year, because I tend to be so effective at that it actually can be harmful to me, because I don't see the referees and I don't hear the referees either if I'm not careful. And that happened to me on my opening lift, the first lift of the meet. I didn't have that kind of dialed in correctly, and I backed out, and I was still adjusting my footing, and I got the squat command. I never saw or heard the squat command. I didn't even see Spidey McQueen up in front of me giving the command. I didn't even see or hear him, and he gave the squat command, and I was still adjusting my footing, and I didn't even notice, and I went ahead and did a beautiful, perfect 220 opening squat and got red lighted. So in some ways that can be a negative if you're not careful, but that's generally how I approach it. I don't even notice the audience at that point. All right, next question. Is there a benefit to sleeping 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. as opposed to getting to sleep later, like 12 a.m. to 9 a.m., or as long as you get the same hours total, it doesn't matter? It does matter when you start going into things to where you are sleeping during the daylight and being fully active during night. Yours isn't so bad here. You're unlikely to see any difference here because it's only 3 hours start and stop difference. You're not going to see a real difference there. However, if you were to change it to shift work, we do know that shift work does affect things like your melatonin production, your D3 production. It affects your circadian rhythms. You do not get the same full benefits of sleeping during the full daytime that you do sleeping at night. So no, people who do shift work, it isn't the same. Your body doesn't recover as well. It doesn't adapt as well. Your health tends to suffer in the long term for it. All right, next question. Can an advanced lifter still progress if they do the same thing every workout, or do they absolutely need periodization / overreaching / deloads? Really tricky question. Generally, the exception you're going to see are going to be people who do things like Bulgarian style training, even though they may be doing the same things every workout. Their individual workouts aren't as important. That style of training tends to work on a full overreaching, underreaching model. It's the cumulative work of every single day over and over and over, working at 90% with the same lifts that ingrains the motor learning. It ingrains a lot of learning that isn't necessarily directly related always to the hypertrophy. And the hypertrophy itself tends to be cumulative from cumulative fatigue over weeks and months. Individual sessions don't matter as much, and so therefore the variability doesn't matter as much, but the things like the back off sets and even a little bit of accessory work you do absolutely dramatically changes the adaptation process. That is enough to help you get around the law of accommodation with that style of training because of the nature of it. When you start getting into things where you're doing more split type routines and you're not, say, doing the squat, bench, and deadlift every day, 5, 6, 7 days a week for singles, then what you find is that you will, when you're doing other different types of training than that, you may very well find that if you don't periodize at all, you might get very long periods of time, 6 months, 9 months, where you stagnate as an advanced lifter. So you will need, when you're truly advanced, you will need a little more advanced techniques, which would include some form of periodization. It would generally be recommended, or you're going to stall. And because it becomes very, very difficult to make progress once you're advanced. Once you're an advanced lifter, every 5 pounds or 10 pounds you put on your squat is a milestone, and it's, you've put in hours and hours of blood, sweat, and tears to get that 5 pounds at that point. It's not like when you're a novice or an intermediate. All right, next question. Will grinding groove methods work for core exercises such as a plank? Say having your max plank time or performing it 2 or 3 times a day on non-training days. Well, if you're only doing it on non-training days, you're not doing greasing the groove. It's not grinding the groove, it's greasing the groove, which is a method that was popularized by the Russian strength and conditioning coach Pavel Tausalin. It's called greasing the groove for those who want to go look that up yourselves. Yeah, it could work, but the thing to keep in mind is that it's very easy to get very strong on non-weighted planks. And what you would find with a method like this, within 3 to 4 weeks, you would probably peak it out to where you could hold planks for several minutes at a time. And they're no longer giving you any real benefit other than very, very long-term strength stamina. So yes, it will work. It will get you to as strong as you can be on those very, very quickly. And then it's not going to give you any more progress just because of the nature of the fact that you're just not adding any more resistance to truly get stronger. Whereas in something like a chin-up is always relatively taxing to do 5 chin-ups no matter how strong you are. It puts some strain on you, so someone coming in and doing 5 chin-ups multiple times every single day can still have some small benefit. And if not, they can go to a 1-arm chin-up once they get really strong at those. Whereas with the planks, it doesn't work that way. You're going to be very limited because it's very easy to peak out strength on those with no weight added. All right, next question. What would you do in a situation where someone is lifting incorrectly and it is very obvious they will injure themselves? Do you ignore them and let them go on about their training, or do you offer advice? I am one of the people who have learned tactfully how to offer advice. I didn't learn initially how to offer this advice. It took me a year or two in gyms to where I was able to do this. Now that I'm older, and I am quite experienced in dealing with people, I get things people on the internet always think for some reason that I'm autistic and I don't have social skills. I'm very, very friendly in person. I'm not what people think of like on the internet. And a lot of people have met me. They realize I'm a very friendly person. I smile, I shake hands, I talk to people. I'm very friendly in person. I am also very authoritative, like I am here. And what I find is that when I approach people with it tactfully and with a certain amount of authority, they do respond, and I know how to approach people with this. And if I do this with women, I don't walk up and flirt with them. It is offered as very genuine, sincere advice. And I do this more often with men historically. Right now, I don't train at a gym, so it's a non-issue. But it's an example. I approached a young man at the last gym I was at who was doing incline dumbbell shoulder presses, incline bench press with dumbbells. And he had his hands turned out almost, and he was doing them like this at the top and not even getting a full range of motion. And I just walked over to him when he was done, and he had been watching me train doing 4 plate per side squats for reps So it was very clear that I was a decently strong individual by his standards. I approached him very calmly and said, hey, do you mind me giving you a piece of advice? Because the way that you're doing that exercise right now, you're going to need a shoulder surgery in a few years. I'd like to save you some trouble, and the way you're doing them, you could get a lot better development. And he stopped and said, okay, tell me more. And I explained to him that, look, the way you're doing them is not only injuring your shoulders, you're pulling your chest out of the movement. I broke down, demonstrated for him step by step how to perform it correctly. I did it myself with lighter dumbbells, showed him how to change his technique, how to get scapular retraction, the better path for the dumbbells. And he immediately said, hey, even with a lighter weight, I feel this a lot more in my chest. And then he found that he was able to use a heavier weight on top of that. So he was stronger and felt it more in his chest, and he felt less strain in his shoulders. He was thankful, and next time I saw him in the gym, he was doing the exercise correctly. Problem solved. But you have to know how to approach people. Not everyone has the tact to do that, and you may not know enough to help them. You might be dealing with someone who actually knows more than you, and you come over and give advice, and it backfires very, very quickly, and they don't like it. So just be aware of that. You shouldn't be giving advice unless you really do know what you're talking about, and you know how to present it both in a friendly, tactful, and authoritative way. So there's a number of skills involved with doing that, and not everyone should be doing that for obvious reasons. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.